Happy day to you. So, we begin with the seventh. In my first presentation, I deal with the structure of thematic reading very, very important. Right? We have the structure. Now today, I want us to look at the fulfillment of that fulfillment. So, from what we read, we established how the king of the north conquers the three obstacles. So we said the king of the north. So the king of the north follows a systematic approach in conquering all the obstacles. So from what we did, we realized that verse number 40, from verse number 40, verse number 40 has A and B. 41 has A and B. Continuing on. So we realized that these two races of each pass are separated by a column. So from the comments that were given during that presentation, my submission is the reason as to why we are here as a movement is not because of nouns and verbs in that already. So that column we see 40, verse number 40 is where we are here as a movement. So verse number 40, part A is the activities of the king of the south towards the king of the north. And then we said the column in the 17th century, the column meant a pause and a shift in explanation on a consequence of the activities of the first phrase. So the first phrase is an activity of the first of the king of the south, and then this in column here is going to show us the consequence of what happens next after this. So this is a cause and effect. So again, the punctuation marks which we see in King James, I think there is a reason as to why God raised the Jeff the don't get used in James. And when we read the King James version, the only ones we are not allowed to use are the ones in italics because they are supplied by who? By the author. Everything else is very significant. If we ignore the prepositions, the punctuation marks, I don't think the Bible will make any sense altogether. So it's very key and crucial for us to use the semicolons, the colons, the comma. That's when we can get the full meaning behind the words. Because when the Bible was written, we are not reading only the words. We want to understand the meaning behind the words, the concept, the idea, what's in the mind of the author. Because before the author speaks, we have the thoughts. And we know the Bible is the thoughts of God, thoughts of God. So we have to go behind those words to understand what they mean. So that's what I can say from the thoughts which were given by some of the members. So we'll continue. So we realized the king of the north has three obstacles. So the first obstacle is the king of the south. The second obstacle is the glorious land. The third obstacle, I called it countries. Some people call it Egypt. From what I did, I see countries as the most appropriate symbol. And then after conquering this obstacle, we have another obstacle which comes, which is not necessarily an obstacle to be conquered, but an obstacle to his rise as an absolute ruler. And this is the glorious Holy Mountain. So from the wording and the structure, and we know this structure is what the reformers are basically. So we can realize that in King James, the king of the south, when the king of the north comes to the king of the south, he enters into the countries. So when he goes into the glorious land, the author, the King James, the translators of King James add countries, which we don't use. Many countries, but we don't use that countries. And then we have countries in the third obstacle, where we have Egypt, Ethiopians, and the Libyans. And then we have the glorious Holy Mountain 5. So what I saw from here is we have a pattern. This pattern is if this is A, this is B. This first obstacle shares characteristics with the third obstacle because we have countries and we have countries. This second obstacle shares common characteristics with this obstacle here. Is the glorious from the wording glorious, glorious. So I will say we have a pattern here, A, B. So this one is equal to this. So we have this is A and this is B. And this is a pattern which we used to call prophetic synthesis. So A will give you more information on this here, because from the structure and the wording, the glorious land here share characteristics with this glorious Holy Mountain here. So from here, what this is going to show us is the way the king of the north is going to interact with this glorious land here will share common characteristics on how he will conquer this glorious Holy Mountain here. So this obstacle here, we realize it's glorious. Today we will know why it's glorious, and this one here is called glorious, and this one is countries, and this one is countries. So I will say this is geography, and this one has issues with the glorious, that glorious concept. So this one means that the way phase number 41 will be fulfilled, because that is where we have the glorious land, will give us a hint on how this aspect here will be fulfilled. This is 45. And how the king of the south was conquered, because part A, this one here is the king of the south. How the king of the south was conquered will give us some characteristics on how the countries which we call Egypt will be conquered. So again, from what we saw, you saw every verse has two phrases: the cause and the effect. When the king of the north does the inversion, we had an effect here. For instance, verse number 41, it tells us the king of the north enters the glorious land. And the effect of this, because we have a colon which will give us an explanation on the effect of these activities here. The effect we have is many will be overthrown, but this, which we know is Edom, Moab, and the chief children of Ammon, will escape. So that is verse number 41. When we go to the countries, we have to see the same thing. So from here, what I will do, today I will now show us the first portion of Daniel 11:41. Because if the first obstacle will be conquered, it will give us a leeway on how the third obstacle will be conquered. So I will do later how the king of the south was conquered. And if we have this effect here, the failure of the king of the north and the success of the king of the north in that history, in that conquering of that website. So today I will begin with verse number 41, and I will show how the glorious holy mountain will interact with the king of the north. And then later on, we'll do how the first obstacle was conquered, verse number 40, and we'll parallel it with how the country's third obstacle will become. So today we'll do that 1141. We'll do part A first. I don't know if we can go to part B and see how who are the men and who are these. So we'll begin with part number A. So part number A, this is done 1141. So we'll do part A. If time allows, we'll do part B. So part number A says, "You shall enter also into the glorious land, and many shall be overthrown." So that is part number A. He shall enter into the glorious land. So I want us to unlock the symbols. So the he from the previous verse is the king of the north. Number 2, enter. Using the concordance, the word enter means go in. I want you to note the following meanings of the word enter. So the first one is to go in. So the phrase says the king of the north enters into the glorious land. And we have also means in the same manner as he did in verse number 40. So the word enter means to go in, attack, abide, besiege, invade, or apply. So I won't write everything, but I hope you see how those meanings apply to that verse. So I will go with attack, besiege, and invade. So the king of the north enters the glorious land. The word glorious, using the time of end magazines plus the concordance, it will tell you the word glorious there means beauty, glory, honor, prominence, and pleasant. So I will go with the glory, honor, and prominence. So in the Bible, you will find the word good, the good lion, good land. So the king of the north we have identified is who? Who is the king of the north? So the king of the north is United States. And we say the glorious land is United States. How and why? That's the first question we will go through and go there. So first number 41, part A, I won't go to the effect because part A said many will be factorial, but I will just leave it here. So and we will now understand how this happens, how the king of the north enters into the glorious land. So we've defined what the he is. He is the king of the north. Enter means to attack, besiege, or invade. Glorious means this goodly land of prominence, honor, and glory. So using other particles, so I will use another particle to help us define all these symbols and whatever is happening here. So I've used a particle of Revelation chapter 13. So we know that 1141, we mark it at the Sunday law. And in Revelation 13, we'll begin with verse number 11. When we go to Revelation 13, verse number 11, so we have a beast coming out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So we have a beast here, which we call anti-beast. And the earth beast, number one, it has two horns. It's a lamb like this with two horns. And what is happening in Revelation 13, verse number 11, is a description of the earth beast. So, what John is doing here is giving the description of the earth beast, he is describing the lamb, and we know from parables, we have the specific attribute of the lamb which he uses. So, we have here horns. So, the lamb has two horns. So, the horns of the lamb are the one compared with the beast. And then for the dragon, it's not all about other characteristics of the dragon, but the speaking. So when you read Revelation 13, Revelation chapter number 12, we know that the speaking, we use the mouth to speak. And Revelation chapter number 12, we know that that dragon spit what we call flag out of its mouth, which is a persecution of the woman in Revelation chapter number 12. When we go to the lamb, two horns from the book of Great Controversy, and what tells us that this beast is the United States of America, and the two horns symbolize the Republicanism and Protestantism. So this is the summary of what the Lord does. So let me define what that one means. So it means we are saying if this beast here is the United States, it has two characteristics that seem to contradict themselves. So when White describes the lamb-like characteristics of this nation, is a direct contrast of the dragon characteristics. So it means the United States of America has two conflicting ethos from its conception. So coming back here, we know that the dragon, from the studies which have been done, we know that the dragon is symbolizes which beast? From Revelation chapter number 12, the dragon is a symbol of which beast? Pagan Rome, right? So this is pagan Rome. From Revelation chapter number 12. When you go to 13, we are told the dragon will give the beast power, great authority and all this. So then we go to Babylon. And then later on, we have the dragon being a characteristic of the United States. So when we come up here, the king of the north, we see that the United States of America is the king of the north. And we know the king of the north in Daniel chapter number 11, the king of the north is satanic kingdom. The king of the north is satanic, and the attributes of being a glorious land is an attribute for God's kingdom. So we have conflicting ideas here. The United States of America being king of the north, and the king of the north is symbolized by those ferocious beasts. If you go to Daniel chapter number 7, see a lion, you have a bear, all those beasts are trained. So it means those are satanic kingdoms. And then when we come here, the United States of America is portrayed as a lamb, which means it's friendly. It's not ferocious because the lamb is innocent. It can't harm anyone. So from here, it means if we identify that the he is the king of the north, is the United States, and the glorious land is the United States. It means this battle here is between the United States of America versus the United States of America. So that's what it means. So United States of America enters into the United States of America. How? How? This one seems to be contradicting. I want to give illustrations to show that kingdoms of Bible prophecy can sometimes portray two conflicting ethos. We'll begin with the first kingdom, which is Babylon. When we go to the Bible, Babylon is the first kingdom of Bible prophecy. And we see many instances in the Bible where God is going to use Nebuchadnezzar. And we know Nebuchadnezzar is one of the four kings which we study in Bible prophecy of Babylon. So Babylon was used. So I want to show some illustrations. The first one of this conflicting ethos. If a kingdom can have two conflicting ethos at the same time. So we begin with Babylon. God used Babylon as a tool to punish his people. And he made these people to be under Babylon. They went into captivity for 70 years. So, and in the Bible, you can see God describing Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon as a whip to his people. So, Babylon can be used as a good tool for the purposes of God. Again, when you go to Daniel 3, we see Babylon giving what we call unrighteous decrees. So an example is Daniel 3, the image of Dura, and which one? Daniel 6. So the second illustration is here. Isaiah 45. God is going to raise a savior, and this savior is Cyrus. And Cyrus is the Messiah for God's people. God is going to raise Cyrus to conquer Babylon. After conquering Babylon, he's going to give 3 decrees. And these decrees were righteous. They were able to restore Israel, the religious authority and the judicial authority. So they are righteous decrees. When we come to another perspective, Medo-Persia gave unrighteous decrees against God's people. The first one is Ahasuerus in the book of Esther. And the second one is Daniel chapter 6.
But then why don't we do Daniel 6? Okay. Daniel 6 in under Babylon.
So under Daniel 6, so this is unrighteous decrees under Medo-Persia. So I didn't have much under Greece. I will give you opinions later. Another one is pagan Rome. There is a time in history when pagan Rome was a shelter for God's people. And you can see that in the New Testament. So I will say pagan was faithful Rome. So we have the son-in-laws, 321, 338, and the 1260. And we can see instances where pagan Rome was an asylum for God's people against the Jews and all those who opposed their religion. So from these instances, we can see a kingdom can have two conflicting ethos at the same time. So meaning here, the United States being so this is the 4th kingdom and the 5th kingdom. Now the 6th, being the 6th kingdom, carries characteristics from the 1st kingdom to the 5th. The sixth kingdom stroke the seventh has characteristics from the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth, of having all these two conflicting factors at the same time. So it means here the United States can act as a lamb, Babylon acted as a lamb here, and then it spake as a dragon. Because speaking is the act of giving laws. So these are laws. It spake as a dragon here. Medo-Persia was a lamb here, and it spake as a dragon here. Greece, I didn't find much information. I pick and roll the same thing, pick and roll here, and then giving the laws. So that gives us a justification that the United States of America can be a land, glorious land, as we've said here, and at the same time can be a dragon existing in the same entity, which is the king of the north. So that is the first illustration. The second illustration is Acts 27. Acts 27, we know we have two ships, the ship of Alexandria and the ship of Adramyttium. So Alexandria means protector or defender. So this is the good ship, defender of God's people, and Adramyttium means abide in death. So these two ships illustrates the experience of the United States of America. This is a bad ship, this is a good ship. Meaning United States of America can be a good ship and a bad ship, glorious. So that is another illustration which I show that. So then, to know how the king of the north, the United States of America, enters the glorious land, which is the United States of America, we need to see how the United States of America is a glorious land. So we'll begin with the king of the north. The characteristics of kings of the north. So number one, these are monarchies, right? Babylon is a monarchy. Medo-Persia was a monarchy. They were ruled by kings. Greece was a monarchy. Pagan Rome, those were kings. And when we come here, for United States of America to speak as a dragon, they must have who? A king. Are we together? So for kings of the north, they are monarchies. Number two, all this, a dragon is a ferocious beast. A bear is a ferocious beast, a lion, and they have terrible characteristics. So it means they are unfriendly and they have what we call unrighteous decrees. So other characteristics of monarchies, I was reading the book by A.T. Jones. So they have no civil, and individual rights. No voice of reason. In conscience. And then lastly, they are a direct contrast with democracies. God placed Babylon side by side with democratic Israel. I believe they had a king by then. So now let's see how United States of America is glorious land. So from the Bible, we know Israel was glorious. And what made Israel to be glorious is because God chose Israel. So if we trace the lineage, you have God called Abraham, and Abraham was given a blessing, a son, and the son was Isaac. Isaac got two kids who was given the blessing of Jacob. And then Jacob got into a covenant with God, and his name changed into what? Israel. So we see God decided to create a nation. And this nation, so Israel became now a nation. At the first, it was pure theocracy. This is a theocracy. So it was a pure theocracy. But later on, we know they repelled against in the book of Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 8. So they needed a king. So that king, it means they were copying who? The kingdoms of the world. Are we together? So they wanted to move from a theocracy into this, a monarchy with a king, where they will have a king over them. And we can see in that book of Samuel how God was protesting against them receiving a king, because he knew what was the repercussions of having a king. So Israel was chosen by God to be a nation, a glorious land, and this it's God teaching the nations on how a perfect kingdom should look like. Number one, it was supposed to be aligned unto the nations. Its government to be the perfect replica of what the intended the government of men to be. Number two, it had a reflection of God's character in it. But now I don't want to concentrate on Israel as a glorious land. Let me come to United States of America as a glorious land. We said Ellen describes the two horns to be republicanism and Protestantism. And this was a contrast of the previous kingdom. So before the United States, we had in the 1260, we had the papacy. So we had the papacy. And we have now the United States of America. So the United States of America is established upon two principles: republicanism and Protestantism, which is a direct contrast on how the leadership of the papacy was. So this republicanism, it gave what we call civil liberty, and Protestantism gave what we call religious liberty, which is a direct contrast to what we call here. Here we call it royal operation, and Lloyd describes to this one to be royal operation, and the royal is about the king, and this one is priestly intolerance. So the United States of America is a direct contrast of the previous kingdom. So which is a lamb. This is a lamb, a direct contrast of the dragon and the papacy. Right. So now let me go to how the United States of America was established. Here we'll do some reading. So I want to start. For what to choose United States of America to be a glorious land, let's see what the idea I had in mind of what a glorious land should look like on earth. So there is a book by Eddie Jones known as patriotism. So that's my difference. When God created Adam, so this is Adam. So when God created Adam, inside his heart, he placed his law. And he gave Adam the authority to self govern himself. So Adam himself was like a kingdom unto himself. But under God. So inside his heart, we have a law, and then we have the Holy Spirit. So the self-government, because when Adam before sin, he was able to do self-government in the way God intended him to do. So because he was using God's law and his Holy Spirit as a guide. When Eve was created, now they were two individuals. Adam doing his self-government, governing himself, and Eve governing herself. When these two came together, a society was formed. This is what it Jones explains. So a society is when is a result of multiplying of human beings. So Adam was created to self-govern himself. When Eve was created, he was given the same authority and abilities to do self-government. So when sin came, and now we know, sometimes we define sin to mean higher powers, the lower powers now in ascendance to higher powers. So the self-government in man was corrupted. If man cannot correctly govern himself, there is no way he can stay with another human being. So it means if these two people after sin can stay together, it will result in anarchy. And we can see that when Cain kills Abel. So because of this, God was forced to establish what we call civil government, which we call here state. This civil government came because if man cannot govern himself internally, then it means he must govern externally. So if there is no internal government, then it means we should have external government, which we call here civil government of the state. And this one went on until when we come to the Tower of Babel. And we saw how confusion prevailed under this one here. So why am I saying this? The idea of the state, all external government was not God's original idea. If man could self-govern himself correctly, then he will relate with another human being in they can live harmoniously without any conflict and clashing. But because sin came, that's why the state or earthly government was instituted by God to externally govern these now two people who have come together. So this society will later now will come to see how it led to the development of nations. Now, having said that, societies are formed when people come together. Now, because sin has come, these people have their rights. So when these people come together, everyone is supposed to surrender their rights. If you have your individual rights, property rights. So when you come together in a society, you surrender your rights to the 99. And then in return of that surrender, you are given full protection of the 99 individuals who also surrender their rights. And then it means you will be 100% secure because you've surrendered your rights. For example, if you want to fight someone, we go as a group like 10 people. It means we'll be more secure with 10 people than going to fight alone. So the rights which human beings were given by God, when societies were formed, you give your rights to this, to the 99, and then in return you have a corporate protection, which gives you more safety and more realization of your rights. So that is how states were formed. Now let me come to the United States. The United States, we have key years. So in the year 1776, we have the Declaration of Independence, and then the ratification of the Constitution came in which year? Which year? So we have 1789, and then we have what we call Bill of Rights, which came in 1790s. 91. What is the Declaration of Independence? So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to explain how the King of the United States of America is a glorious land, and what glorious land means from the concept of God, because it's a nation, and we need to find out how that attribute bring glorious functions here. So what's the Declaration of Independence? Declaration of Independence was written by Thomas Jefferson. So it was a document which, let me call it, Bill of Rights. It was a document which was written by Thomas Jefferson to give reasons as to why the 13 colonies did have a right to separate from the Great Britain. So under the Declaration of Independence, the first line reads, I don't know who has it. Who has the Declaration of Independence? I want to read the first line. So let me read that sentence, and we will use it here. Who has it? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain and unalienable rights, which includes life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, I'm paraphrasing, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the government. So we see it begins by saying we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. So from here we are told all men are created equal. Number two, they have been given what we call unalienable rights, the rights that no one can take away from them. The rights include we have life, and we have pursuit of happiness. which sometimes is substituted with the property. So these are the rights given by their creator, and nobody has the right to take away all these rights from anyone. So that's what we call the Declaration of Independence. So it was not all about the rule of law. They wanted to get away from the Great Britain. And then 1789, the Constitution was ratified, and the Constitution now gave the structure of the United States of America government, where it divided the government into three branches, where we have the executive, we have the judiciary, and the legislature. And all these were to protect the rights of the people. Because if we have the three arms of the government, what's the role of the judiciary? Anyone? So the executive is to enforce laws. The legislature is to make, and then the judiciary is to interpret. And these three branches of government, the Constitution brought what we call the separation of powers and checks and balances. That is what the Constitution brought. So, and then we have the Bill of Rights. So these are individual rights. So these were like amendments to the Constitution where it censured the excesses of the government. And now this is what we call individual rights, which were not properly instituted by the Constitution. So these are the individual rights. So in the sermon, there's a sermon here by Elder Terry. And the sermon is let me see how the sermon is. Yeah, the sermon is The Dragon Power by Elder Terry, tracing the dragon power. So there is an article she reads, which is Trump's rise makes an end to law, progressive era in the United States. So in this article, they say that this Declaration of Independence here was just a bill of goods. They were giving their supplication to the Great Britain and other countries why they needed to get out of Britain. And this, by 1776, even if the United States of America got independence here, they were under the state of lawlessness. They did have their own law. And in the state of lawlessness, we know if you don't have a law, what it brings is anarchy or an animal spirit. So this, from the beginning, from its conception, United States of America already was speaking as a dragon. We'll review that later. And then when the Constitution came, it brought what we call lawlessness. Now the nation had lawlessness. Now they were governed by a law. But this Constitution came with defects. It is an imperfect document. That's why we have now checks. The Bill of Rights came to check the Constitution, where the same way the Constitution came to check on the Declaration of Independence. So the Constitution, because when we are told here, back in before the Midland Cry message, we could draw the United States of America as a lamb with two horns, and in the middle of the two horns, we could say this is what the Constitution, which separates church and state. So here, when the Constitution came, now we have United States of America as a lamb, because this is the Constitution that defines the perfect government, which is a direct contrast of the dragon, which is pagan Rome and back to Rome. So these are the things which we will need to use as we continue. Now, when the government came, one of the reasons as to why we have this kind of government here is to protect individual rights, because everyone has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In another sermon by Elder Tess, done in the early 2020, and the sermon is US It's Know Your Glory. She identifies that the sin of the United States is what we call state nationalism. So this is the sin of the United States. So this one we'll see by the time we come to the Sunday law. Now let's define what nationalism is. Because of time, I want to define what nationalism is. Under that same study by the Terry, tracing the dragon power, the article defines or differentiates between patriotism and nationalism. So where patriotism is defending one's country and having willingness to improve its structure and its flaws. But under nationalism is desire for power and prestige for the nation, leading to feelings of superiority. So nationalism, so this is desire for power, leading what we call superiority over others. So when the United States of America was instituted, Abraham Lincoln under Gettysburg Address says it was conceived in liberty. If you know that address, the forefathers created a nation in that continent, conceived in liberty, freedom, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So if we treat each other equally, like this model here of Eden, where Adam, perfect self-government, Eve, perfect self-government, when they come together, they make a society without any external government. And this society will live harmoniously. But since we don't have this, they created a government which was conceived under liberty. Liberty means you give every human being their rights. You treat your neighbor the same way you would like them to treat you. So loving your neighbor here, it means you treat them equally with dignity. And the reason that's why you should treat them as human with dignity is because they are just human. God gave them the dignity as human beings. So we could see this, love your neighbor the way you love yourself, from an individual level to countries and states. So if this is how the state was formed from individuals, this United States of America here was formed by individuals. And this, now we don't have a king who is an absolute ruler, but we have a government elected by representatives, by the people themselves. So the people have the power, not the king, as we saw with the dragon and those earthly kingdoms. Why am I saying all this? The reason as to why the United States of America is a glorious land, it's because it has given people the rights God gave them. The people have been given the inalienable rights. Rights to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, which is to own property. And this was instituted in the Constitution. So as the former glorious land Israel was given the Bible, the United States of America was given a constitution. And these two can be compared and contrasted. So that is what makes the United States of America a glorious land. Now, when Elder says the sin of the United States is state nationalism, this is what it means. The United States of America, having been given the privilege of being the glorious land and the superpower in her own time, she's going to misuse the power and feel she's superior than other nations and countries. And whatever is going to do is against what God instituted it to be as the glorious land. I want to illustrate this from another perspective. I want to wrap here. So I finish. From the line of Eden to Eden, we know we have three main sins: the sin of Eve, the sin of Cain, and the sin of Ham. So we have gender, which is sexism. So we have gender here, and then we have Sabbath here, and then we have race. And then at the end of the one, we know this one becomes now racism in the early years in the United States, and this is 1888, and this one is our Sunday law. So the law of God, we have the first four and the last six. And Romans 13, the powers that be revolve here, the relations between human and human. So now, when man was created in Eden, we had Adam and Eve. This was perfect equality. Sin came. So this is equality. And then later on, we have inequality. So the sin of sexism and the sin of racism all revolve around inequality. This one is having one gender superior to the other. This one is having one less superior than the other. And this one, in the 1888 history, is all about worship. Having one religion more superior than the other. So we see all these things is all about inequality, which came as a result of sin. Now, when we come from individuals, some of the issues which we mark at the Sunday law, or before the time of the period, we have the three movements: civil rights movement. This is all about race. Let me say race here, plus others. And then we have feminism. This is about gender. And then we have LGBTQ, Stonewall. Which is LGBTQ. All these sins are about superiority, having dominion. Because when sin came now, Adam was above Eve. They are no longer living in harmony. Now, some of the issues were identified at the Sunday law. We have another one is nationalism here. Nationalism. This is all about us as a nation. The second one, the fourth one, I have said religion. Another one is immigration. Plus many others. So, racism, it means one race is superior. United States of America is only for the whites. Feminism, the males are dominant. They are superior to the other gender. LGBTQ, it means being heterosexual is more superior than the others. So this is hetero. Nationalism, meaning United States of America, is special in its own. Here, it means make America Christian again. So Christianity is more superior than other religions. Immigration, origin, it means we are born in the United States of America. So this is discrimination based on origin. So all this discrimination, they don't just happen by making this one entity superior. It also includes oppressing the others, the minority. For example, when you make the white superior race, you make the blacks what? Slaves. When you make male dominant, you do what? You abuse the other gender. When you make heteros to be the prototype of what God created, you abuse the other the others. Nationalism. If the United States of America is superior and special, it means they can do anything to other countries by oppressing them. Religion. If Christianity is the main religion and United States of America is a Christian nation, it means we can have Islamophobia, we can discriminate against atheists and all other religions. Immigration. And we know this is an issue in 2024. If you are not born in the United States, then it means you can be treated as a trash. So these are the issues revolving around the Sunday law. And this is what will make the king of the north enter into the glorious land. Because the glorious land was meant to be a nation conceived in liberty, meaning it protects the rights of everyone. If we know everyone was created equal, we can't have superiority in color. If we know everybody was created equal, we can't have superiority based on gender. We can't have discrimination based on your sexual orientation, discrimination against which country you come from, discrimination against the religion you have, and your country of origin. So the issues, when we say the king of the north enters the glorious land, it means it's erosion of the principles which made the United States of America to be the glorious land. And those principles are all about human rights. And human rights goes hand in hand with equality. But since our most prevalent issue is gender, it doesn't mean we ignore all the others, because we have these others are playing a role in this prophetic narrative as well. So human rights, do you love your neighbor? If the government which God created here, where Adam will do self-ruling in an appropriate way, then we could exist even without a government. But since this one failed, this government failed, and Adam chose to get out of the government of God, that's why we have all this discrimination. So you don't love your neighbor. If you love your neighbors, you love yourself. We can't have racism, we can't have sexism, we can't have this is homophobia, we can't have nationalism, we can't have this one here, discrimination based on religion, and we can't have all these issues for immigration. So part A of Daniel 11:41, the king of the north enters into the glorious land. It means the attributes of the kingdom of Satan, which is inequality, violation of human rights, no voice of conscience. These principles get into the United States of America as a glorious land. And we don't see the horns being broken as we were saying. No, it's just receiving of these principles and electing into leadership position people who don't believe on these human rights here. That is how I understand the scene of the United States looks like. And that's how the king of the north enters, attacks. This is ideological war, besieges, and invades the glorious land. So it's a war of the United States of America against itself. Thank you for your time. Let's pray. My dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for what you've given us here at the end of the line. And thank you for the methodology which is given us properly with how to understand these truths. Indeed, we are living in the Sunday law, it's true. And all we need is your guidance to help us understand these truths and apply them into our lives in order to be ready for the second advent. Because the mark of the beast is here, the angel is embraced. We ask you, Lord, to guide us as a unity individuals or practice test and qualify to to thank you for the day. Thank you the other speakers. That's also in case of